I'm Adam Richards and I'm at Woodlands Lakes in Thirsk today. We're sat on Kestrel Lake and I'm going to give you my top tips on winter bomb fishing. Now a lot of people think winter bomb fishing's all about chuck and chance. Obviously you've got to be sat in the areas where the carp are, but there's lots of little things you can do to improve your catch at the end of the match. So an integral part of winter bomb fishing is fish location. Now obviously if you're fishing a match, you're restricted to the peg you draw. If you're going pleasure fishing, it's important to firstly sit in an area where you're probably going to catch some fish. So try looking at recent match results. If there's an on-site tackle shop, speak to them and sit yourself in the best area of the lake, somewhere that's been winning matches, people have regularly been catching pleasure fishing, and at least you know you're in an area where there's going to be some fish. Now, being sat in an area where there's some fish is one thing, but you still have to find exactly where they are. There's blatant telltale signs. Fish topping and rolling is an obvious one. If you see that, it's an obvious place to start and an obvious place to cast. As well as that, on flat calm days, you'll often see little bits of fizzing and bubbles coming up. Again, a place to cast, an area to cast to. In clear water, you can sometimes even see a bit of disturbance, a bit of mud kicked up and that type of thing. Now, other than the visual signs you can see of the fish, it's really important to watch your tip. Line bites are crucial in winter to finding out where the fish are sat. A line bite will show that the fish is somewhere between your rod tip and the bomb. Now it's really important when you cast in that you don't sink your line too fast. What I like to do is let my bomb hit the bottom, tighten up to it so I've got a decent bend in my tip, and just let the line sink along the surface. You can watch it sinking, your tip will start to slacken off a bit as it sinks, just tighten it back up again slightly. What that allows is your line to sink through any shoals of fish, meaning that you locate fish that you wouldn't find with your line totally sunk. Now, where you first casting your peg is really important. Obviously, on a lake like we're on today, it's just a square lake, there's going to be anglers opposite you and anglers next to you. The last thing you want to do is push your fish away into their pegs, spook them out of your own peg if they're there to start with. What I like to do, today the middle of the lake is probably 30 metres. Now, it's easy to cast to 30 metres and start off there, but the only place the fish can go then is out of your peg. What I like to do is give myself some space for them to back off to. I'll start off probably around 20 metres today. I'll have a cast straight in front of me, give it 10 to 12 minutes, have a look for indications of liners. If there's no signs, then do the same to your left, the same to your right. After that, if there's no signs of fish, just slowly work your way out, 2 or 3 metres at a time. Have your 10 or 12 minute casts again. Now it's really important that you don't try and go too far straight away. Now if you've left an area of your swim untouched, whether that be to the right, to in the middle of the lake, it's going to be a killer area for you to target late on. Other people have been casting around the pegs, hopefully they've worked their way out quicker than you have, and what they've done is helped herd the fish into an area that you've left safe. The last hour of the day, the light's dropping, the fish want to feed a bit, and you've got your untouched area where some fish have shoaled up. That can lead to your vital 5 or 6 fish late on, which can push you from maybe a section win to a frame place, or a frame place to a win. So tackle choice for winter bomb fishing is it's very much the same as a summer, to be honest, but what I do is scale everything down a little bit. So starting from the rod, my rod of choice in the summer is a Sphere bomb plus 10%. Plenty of backbone, plenty of strength for big hard fighting summer carp. Come winter, what I do is just drop down a bit. I go down to the standard bomb rod. It's just a little bit softer, a little bit more forgiving, and just allows me to play fish confidently, knowing I'm not going to pull out of them. Moving on from there is my reel. Obviously there's no need for a different reel from summer. I stick with the Black Viper Compact. It's a powerful reel, decent size, can do everything I ask of it. Where I do change is the main line I put on my reel. So in summer I generally fish with an 026 method mono. It's nice and strong, durable, and generally I'll be having a decent weight on it to cast, so it's not going to hinder my casting. In winter I drop that down to 020. Now the main reason for that is the fact that I'm going to be fishing little light bombs. It just makes it casting that much easier. I can get a little bit more distance than what I would with a heavier main line. Moving on from the main line, then I've obviously got my setup. Now, starting with a bomb. Years ago, I used to fish a nice simple lead clipped onto a swivel. And it was after a lot of conversations with Nick Speed that I decided to change that. He's a massive advocate of inline olivettes as his bombs, and I couldn't see the advantage, to be honest, but having spoke to him a lot, he was so confident that I just had to give it a try. And what I did find once I changed to the inline bombs, or inline olivettes as they were, is the bites seemed so much more positive. And when I started thinking about it, with your standard bomb with a link swivel that we'd all put on something change bombs, there's a lot of movement there before the fish actually feels the weight of the bomb, which is what causes it to hook itself. With an inline bomb, it's straight on your line, a fish picks it up, and it sort of has that extra split second where the fish feels the weight of it earlier, leading to a better hook up. And obviously that's what we're looking for. You want every fish to hook itself. So I'm a massive advocate of inline olivettes as they were then, but I've actually changed to a small inline bomb now. So I thread this onto my line. After that, I've got two small Browning oval stoppers. These are the large size. What they do is fit into the bottom of my bomb choice really well. That it sort of sits on top of them and they slightly go in, which causes a little bit of friction, but my rig's still totally free running. Below that, I've got a little swivel connector, and I force the last bead over the swivel of that, so it gives me a really neat connection. Moving down from there is your hook length choice. Now, in summer, I go for 020 or 022 hybrid power mono. Obviously strong and robust for catching big weights, but mainly for me, it's about the stiffness of the hook length. Having a stiff hook length just really aids, again, self-hooking, make sure I get better hookups. Now, coming on to winter, the water's a bit clearer, fish aren't fighting as hard. I don't really want that heavy line that I'm using. I want something a bit thinner, but I don't want to lose the stiffness. So what I do is change from the hybrid power mono to the C-Nex fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon's a lot stiffer than standard mono, which means I can get away with a lighter diameter, sort of 015, 017, but retain that stiffness that's important for self-hooking. Then to finish the rig off, I've got, in summer I generally go for a size 12 or a 14 hook. I use a KKM, which is mega sharp, which I think is really important. The first thing you want is for them to prick themselves, feel the weight of your lead, swim off. Obviously your fish is hooked. Coming to winter, I scale down a little bit and I fish with a size 16 or an 18 of the same hook. Onto that, that's obviously tied knotless knot for a hair rig, and I'll have a band for a pellet or a push stop, which I use for mounting things like meat or bread. Once you're actually sat fishing, it's important to have your rod nice and secure. Obviously you're keeping your eyes peeled, you're watching around the lake for signs of fish topping, bubbling, liners, whatever. The last thing you want is your rod to be pulled in. Obviously bites can be very savage off carp. So what I like to do is have a nice steady butt rest. I've got it fixed in place on an arm on my box, my rod jams into it, can't go anywhere, it's never going to get pulled in. For tension in my tip, I actually like to fish with quite a good bend in my tip. Not so that it's locked up, I still need enough movement that I can see line bites. So I tighten up so I've got a good bend, but not bent as far as it'll go. When it comes to putting the tension in my tip, there's one really important thing that I like to do. I cast out, let my bomb hit the bottom, and don't bother sinking my line. I leave it floating on the surface and tighten up so I've got that decent bend in it. What that allows to happen is the line sinks naturally through the water rather than you force it down, which takes it a bit more time, but it gives it chance to fall and sink through any fish that are in your peg, just letting you see liners that you might not otherwise have seen. Right, hook bait choice is really important for winter bomb fishing. A lot of the time you're not feeding anything, so your bait needs to be visual, maybe have a bit of smell to it. Carp need to find it attractive. Now, there's loads and loads of choices of hook baits. People use all sorts. But for me, there's two main baits that I use for when I'm fishing without feeding any bait, and another bait that I use when I'm going to feed some bait. So first of all, my number one bait, go-to, what I use everywhere it's allowed, is a piece of punched meat. For me, it's got everything. It's relatively light coloured so the fish can see it. It sinks slightly slower than most baits due to the fat content in it. And also it's got a little bit of smell about it, so if the water's a bit more coloured, fish can locate it that way. Most importantly, I've got the utmost confidence in it. And for me, if you're casting a bait into a lake, you're not feeding anything, you need to be 100% certain that a carp's going to pick it up if there's one near it. And confidence is the most important thing. If you're not confident your bait's right, or you're not confident a fish is going to eat it, then you're probably not going to leave it in for the right amount of time. You'll be wanting to recast. So always stick with what you're most confident in. For me, that's meat. The next bait, and what I'd say is probably the most popular bait to fish on a bomb in winter, is punched bread. Now, at Woodlands where we are today, personally I don't find bread all that good. There's a lot of small silverfish which are a problem, pecking it off. And the water actually stays quite coloured, which doesn't really give you much visibility of the bait, and I think bread's best due to its visibility. So anywhere that's really clear, bread's very good. Also fishing up to features where fish are naturally sat off the bottom, it's very good again. I'll always have some with me though, wherever I go, and there can be days you can't catch on anything else, and a piece of popped up bread really is the best bait. Generally, the type of days that I find best for bread are bright and sunny, really still, cold, sort of where the fish have got every reason to be sat up off the bottom. And the third bait that I'll use when I want to feed some bait is pellets. Now, I'm not a big fan of casting a pellet in when I'm not feeding anything, but if I'm going to feed, then pellets lend themselves perfectly to that. I can fire them to where I want them, and it just makes sense to fish the same hook bait. During the course of a winter, there's hundreds and hundreds of matches won without feeding a single thing and just casting a bomb around your peg. Now that, most of the time, is the best method. But there is days when feeding can improve your peg. Now, them days for me are generally when it's been cold and it suddenly warms up. We might have 3 or 4 days of double figure temperatures, warm overnight. That normally coincides with it being a bit wet, a bit windy, but the water temperature's rising from what it's been. The fish become slightly more active. They're not going to be suddenly spread all over the lake, but if you're in an area where they are, swimming around, and a little bit of feed can spur them into eating your hook bait, into moving into your peg. Now, when you might want to feed 5 or 6 pellets, obviously you're not going to go back to summer feeding pouches full, 6 or 7 pints. You just want to be feeding a little bit. But instead of feeding 4 or 5 at a time, what I personally like to do is just feed 1 or 2 and feed them 3 or 4 times. By doing that, I'm creating a little bit more competition. Rather than just have the plop of 4 pellets hitting the water and 4 pellets sinking, I've now got them plopping in 4 different times and sinking 4 different times. And a long time ago, when I first started fishing here, it's a conversation I remember having with Barry Gregory, who used to own the fishing shop here. He'd asked me to join the team that he'd got on the site, and he was talking to me about winter fishing. I'd had a really good summer. Come the winter, he was trying to emphasise the fact that if you can get one fish to compete for your bait, then another one will start eating as well. And that's something that's always stuck with me. And I just feel that by feeding less bait, more regular, just 1 pellet at a time, you're giving a fish the opportunity to see that bait and react to it more often, which can only lead to more competition in your peg, more chance of a fish eating your bait, and more chance of catching one. So we've had a great session today. We've caught plenty of fish and hopefully demonstrated some tips that you can use in your fishing. Winter bomb fishing can be devastating. It's a great tactic, it's nice and simple. You don't need loads of tackle and you don't need loads of bait. If you want to check out the tackle that I've used today, just log on to Facebook, have a look on Brown and Fishing UK. If you want to know anything about it, send a message to that page and you're sure to get a reply. If you want any information on the fishery, you'll see the website on a link below.